The evening at the Rooftop restaurant begins calmly. Kiara adjusts the black apron on her uniform. Her shift is in full swing. She carries plates of hot food, clears away empty glasses, and smiles at the guests. Everything is as usual. Her large eyes automatically scan the room, noticing who needs water, who has finished dinner. The door opens. 3 men enter. The air in the room seems to thicken for a second. 2 of the newcomers remain at the entrance. Their gazes slowly and emotionlessly glide over the tables, over the guests' faces, into the far corners. They don't sit. They simply stand and watch. A third person passes between them. He heads for the best table at the back of the room, by the wall. This table is always free in the evenings, even if the restaurant is full. It's not a rule, but everyone understands. This is Junho. Kiara knows him. He comes here once a week, sometimes less often. He never orders himself. His people do the talking. He speaks little, mostly listening. He pays in cash, always leaving a generous tip under the drink. For Kiara, he's just a customer. Not the easiest, but not a problem. She watches him sit down. He has a square, muscular face and short black hair. He's 27, but his eyes are mature and tired. He takes off his dark jacket and hangs it over the back of his chair. Underneath, he wears a gray shirt that stretches across his broad shoulders. He looks as if he's always been active. He doesn't slouch. He sits up straight, yet relaxed. Another man in a formal suit approaches his table. They begin a quiet conversation. Junho nods, occasionally asking a quick question. There's no smile or anger on his face, just attentiveness. Kiara picks up a pitcher of ice water. She approaches their table to fill their glasses. One of the men at the door turns his head slightly toward her, looks at her hands, at the pitcher, and then looks away, just as indifferently. Junho doesn't look at her. He looks at his companion. Kiara quietly pours the water. Her movements are precise. She doesn't spill a drop. Returning to the counter, Kiara takes one last look at their table. All is calm. A quiet business dinner. Nothing out of the ordinary. Soft background music plays in the restaurant, mingling with the hum of voices and the clink of cutlery. Kiara takes their order from the kitchen and carries it to another table. She smiles at the couple and places their plates in front of them. She's used to working quickly and attentively. Her gaze is always on the move. She notices that the girl at the corner table has run out of wine. She sees the man by the window looking for the waiter. She keeps up with everything. 15 minutes pass. The evening flows smoothly. Junho and his companion continue to speak quietly. Glasses of water and 2 cups of black coffee sit on the table in front of them. They haven't ordered food. Kiara clears the dirty plates from the next table and places them on her tray. She turns to carry them to the kitchen. Her path takes her past Junho's table. She looks straight ahead, but out of the corner of her eye, she sees his profile. He raises a glass of water to his lips. His face is turned toward the window. The window is large, taking up the entire wall, and it reflects the warm light of the restaurant's lamps and the darkness of the street beyond. Kiara takes a step and suddenly stops, unconsciously. Her body stops on its own. Something clicks in her head. Something is wrong. She slowly turns her head toward the window, not toward the reflection, but through it, into the night. Across from the restaurant stands an old office building. Most of its windows are dark, but in one window on the 3rd floor, there's something there. Not a light, not a spark, more like a glint, a tiny pinpoint flash, like the beam of a flashlight hitting glass or metal. This glint lasts for a split second, and then it's gone. Kiara freezes. She looks at that dark window. Nothing, just a square of black glass. Then the glow appears again, briefly, and then fades again, as if someone outside that window is carefully moving an object, and that object catches the reflection of the street lamp. Her heart suddenly starts beating faster, not from fear, but from some strange, cold attention. She doesn't understand what it is, but her brain screams danger. She looks at Junho again. He's still sitting, turned toward the window, drinking water. A ray of light from the darkness, if there was one, would hit his temple. It all happens in 2 seconds. A glint in the window, a glance at Junho, and a chilling understanding. Kiara has no time to think, no time to scream. Her body moves on its own. It discards everything unnecessary. She drops the heavy tray. Dirty plates crash and clatter to the floor. The sound is deafening in the quiet room. Guests at nearby tables jump and turn around. Junho takes his eyes off his interlocutor for a second, looking toward the source of the noise. He sees the waitress rushing toward his table. A look of mild surprise crosses his face for a moment, then a cold wariness. One of his men at this door steps forward, but Kiara is already here. She doesn't run. She falls forward, her whole body. Her hands reach out, not to the glass, not to the table. Her strong arms, accustomed to carrying heavy trays, grip the thick fabric of the jacket on the back of the chair, and the shirt itself on Junho's shoulder. She pushes, with all the force that adrenaline and her athletic form give her. Her push is strong and unexpected. Junho is a strong, heavy man, but the chair beneath him is old, with thin legs, and his weight is already shifted forward when he turns toward the sound. He doesn't have time to react. The chair toppled over with a crash, taking Junho with it. He vanished from the table, collapsing heavily onto the floor. His shoulder and head hit the carpet, thudding dully against the wooden floor beneath him. At the same split second he falls, the restaurant window behind him rattles. The sound isn't loud, not at all like a chair falling. It's a short, high-pitched crunch, like someone hitting the glass with a sharp stone. A small, perfectly round hole appears in the large glass. Its edges are sharp but not crumbling. And then, on the wall directly opposite, a meter from where Junho's head sat, another hole appears, small and neat. From it, thin cracks spread out across the plaster in all directions, forming a shape resembling a spiderweb or a star. White dust falls to the floor. There is complete, absolute silence in the restaurant. Everyone freezes. The guests at the tables, frozen with forks in their hands. The cook poking his head out from behind the kitchen door. Junho's interlocutor, his face white, his mouth slightly open. The silence lasts only a second, maybe two, but it feels like an eternity. In this silence, the only sound is Kiara's heavy, ragged breathing. She stands bent over the overturned chair, her arms still stretched out in front of her. She looks at the hole in the glass, then at the hole in the wall. Her brain finally catches up with what her body has done. Cold sweat breaks out on her back under her uniform. Then the silence is broken by the first sound. It's not a scream. It's a short, frightened gasp from a woman at a table by the window. She looks at the hole in the glass, then at her plate, as if not understanding the connection. And this sigh is enough. The chaos starts slowly, then erupts all at once. Someone screams. Someone drops a glass. Chairs creak, people start jumping up and ducking. But Junho's people are already on the move. They're not shouting, they're acting. The man standing by the door who stepped forward is at the table faster than anyone can process. He doesn't look at Kiara. He drops to one knee next to the overturned chair, blocking Junho's view of the window with his body. The second man is already there, grabbing Junho's companion by the elbow and abruptly pulling him off the chair and onto the floor. Junho's calm but firm voice comes from the floor. There's no panic or anger in it, only clarity and command. Calm down. Everyone, calm down. His guard, kneeling, speaks quickly into his ear. Junho nods. He lies on the floor, covered by the body of his man and a massive table. He doesn't try to get up right away. The second guard raises his head and speaks loudly and clearly, cutting through the growing noise. Everyone on the floor, get away from the windows, now! His voice doesn't waver. It sounds like an order that's not to be questioned. Not everyone obeys, but the panic takes hold. People begin to slide out of their chairs, press themselves to the floor, crawl toward the walls, away from the windows. The security guard helps Junho up onto all fours. They don't stand up. They move quickly, almost on their bellies, from the table to the service door behind the counter, which leads to the utility rooms and the kitchen. The second security guard follows them backwards, his eyes still scanning the room and the windows. Within 10 seconds, Junho and his men disappear behind the service door. The door closes. Kiara is still standing in the same place. She hasn't moved since the fall. Her arms are slowly falling to her sides. She feels them trembling. A tremor runs through her entire body, small and uncontrollable. She looks at the empty chair lying on its side, at the glass of water that has fallen but not broken, the water slowly spreading across the carpet in a dark stain. She looks at the hole in the glass. Through this small hole, a cold night air wafts into the room. The noise in the restaurant continues unabated. People are talking excitedly. Some are crying, and someone is making a shaky phone call. The cook and manager are trying to calm everyone down, but they themselves look pale and frightened. But for Kiara, it all sounds as if it's coming from far away, through a thick wall. She hears only her own heartbeat in her ears. She sees only 2 points, a hole in the glass and a hole in the wall. Between them is the empty space where a man had just been sitting. She understands. She understands it all perfectly. If she hadn't dropped the tray, if she hadn't thrown herself, if she had screamed or frozen in place, that little hole wouldn't be in the wall. It would be in his head. Only a deep, shuddering breath saves her from fainting. The air burns her lungs. She feels cold sweat on her forehead. Her legs feel weak. And then the service door opens again. The same guard who had been kneeling steps out. His face is stony. His eyes quickly find Kiara. He walks straight across the hall toward her, ignoring the others. He stops in front of her. He looks at her. Not at her face, but as if assessing her completely, from head to toe, in a second. You, he says quietly, but so that she can hear him over the noise. Follow me. He wants to see you. Kiara can't answer. She simply nods. Her legs move of their own accord, following the guard's broad back to that very same service door. Behind her lies the noisy, frightened hall, broken plates, and two small ominous holes. Silent witnesses to what could have just happened, but didn't, because she reacted. The guard opens the door for her. Kiara steps into the narrow hallway behind the kitchen. It smells of cleaning products, clean laundry, and food. The sounds from the living room immediately become muffled. The only sounds are the murmur of voices and her own footsteps on the linoleum. The guard walks ahead, not looking back. He leads her to the last door at the end of the hallway. A sign on the door reads, Manager. The guard opens the door without knocking and lets Kiara in first. The room is small. It's the manager's office. There's an old wooden table, a couple of chairs, and a filing cabinet filled with papers. A lamp with a green shade burns on the table, casting a bright circle of light around it. The rest of the room is in semi-darkness. Junho stands at the table with his back to the door. He's looking at the wall, but it's clear he's not really looking at it. His shoulders are tense. He's put his jacket back on. He speaks briefly and quietly into the phone in Korean. His voice is even, but there's a hint of steel in it. Kiara pauses at the threshold. The guard remains at the door, his large frame almost filling the opening. He nods silently to Junho. Without turning around, Junho raises his hand, signaling, Wait! Kiara tries to breathe more quietly. She looks at Junho's back. She sees the muscles moving under the fabric of his jacket. He puts down his phone. He doesn't turn around right away. First, he places both hands on the table and lowers his head for a moment, taking a deep breath. Then he slowly turns around. His face is now in the lamplight. It's still square and masculine, but now it seems carved from stone. There's a small red mark on his forehead, the mark of a fall, or of hitting a chair. His eyes look at Kiara. There's no gratitude in them, no anger either, only a cold, heavy assessment. He looks at her as if trying to discern her every thought. The silence in the room thickens. Muffled screams can be heard outside, but it's quiet here. Close the door, wait outside, Junho tells the guard. His voice is quiet but clear. The guard gives Kiara one last quick glance, then steps back and closes the door. The click of the lock sounds loud in the silence. Kiara and Junho are left alone in the small room. 3 steps separate them. He stands by the table, she by the door. The air feels chilly, though the room is stuffy. Junho doesn't offer her a seat. He doesn't sit himself. He just watches. His gaze glides over her face, her figure, her hands, still clenched into fists with tension. Come closer, he says finally. Towards the light. Kiara forces her legs to move. She takes 2 steps forward. Now she's at the edge of the lamp's circle of light. She feels his gaze on her skin, like a touch. He doesn't move. He studies her. The silence stretches for several seconds, which feel like minutes. Kiara tries not to tremble. She looks at his face, not his eyes, but somewhere near his chin. She sees the firm line of his pressed lips. What's your name? He asks. His Russian is almost unaccented, with just a slight firmness in the pronunciation of certain sounds. Kiara, she answers. Her voice is hoarse, and she swallows. Kiara, Kiara, he repeats, as if testing the name. Have you been working here long? A year. About a year, she says. She feels strange talking about work here and now. He nods, as if this information means something to him. Then he takes a small step forward, to the edge of the table. Now they're very close. Kiara can see every detail of his face, the small scratch on his cheekbone, the tired look at the corners of his eyes, the hard angle of his square jaw. He places his palms on the table on either side of him and leans forward slightly. His movements are slow, controlled. Okay, Kiara, he says quietly. Now tell me, why did you do this? This is not a shout, not an accusation. It is a flat, cold, direct question. It contains only one thing, a demand for the truth. Kiara looks at him. Thoughts race through her head. She could say she wanted to help, that she was scared, that she wasn't thinking, but none of that is entirely true. At that moment, there were no thoughts. There was only... She looks away from his face and at his shoulder. At the very spot where she tugged, there's a slight wrinkle left in the dark fabric of his jacket from her grip. I saw a glint, she says simply. Her voice gains strength because she's speaking of what she saw, of a fact. In the window across the street, there, on the 3rd floor, first once, then again, like a glint of glass or metal. She looks up and now looks him straight in the face. He listens, without moving, without blinking. I looked at you. You were sitting right in front of this window, and I suddenly understood. I didn't think it was a weapon. I didn't even have time to think the word weapon, but my body was already moving. I realized that this gleam, it was aimed at you, and if it moved again, it would be too late. She falls silent, catching her breath. The room is quiet again. That's it? Junho asks, his face still impassive. You saw the glint and understood. Weren't you afraid of making a mistake? Of attacking a client without cause? Kiara slowly shakes her head. No! There was no time to be afraid. There was no time to think about making a mistake. There was only, I had to get you off this line, from where that light fell. That's all. She speaks the truth, the simplest and purest truth of that moment. There was no heroism, no calculation. There was only animal instinct and the reaction of a body trained by years of sport and fast work. Junho leans back from the table and straightens up. He crosses his arms over his chest. His eyes narrow. He looks at her, and now there's something new in his gaze. Not trust yet, but interest, analysis. You didn't know it was dangerous, he states, as if to himself. You risked your job. They might have thought you were crazy, but you did it anyway. Yes, Kiara says simply. Why? He asks again. But this time it's about something else. Not about the effect, but about a deeper cause. Kiara shrugs. The movement comes out tired and sincere. I don't know. Probably. Because if I hadn't pulled and something had happened, I wouldn't have been able to look at myself afterwards. It would have been worse than any mistake. She says these words, and only now realizes that they are true. She is not a hero. She is simply a person who could not live with the thought that she could have prevented disaster, and did not. Junho looks at her for a long moment. Then his gaze softens. It doesn't warm, but some of the icy pressure disappears. He nods slowly. Okay, he says again. The word sounds like a conclusion, like a verdict. He turns away from her, picks up the phone from the table, dials a short number, and puts the receiver to his ear. Inseok, he says. Come in. The door opens almost immediately. A guard he called Inseok enters the room. He looks at Junho, waiting for orders. Junho looks at Kiara, then at his man. She's telling the truth, Junho says. Insoku. She just saw and reacted. Nothing more. Inseok nods, as if that were enough for a full report. Now there's a problem, Junho continues, his voice becoming businesslike and firm again. He looks at Kiara. You became a witness. Whoever was in that window saw you too. Now you're part of this story. You're in danger just like me. These words fall like heavy stones into the silence of the room. Kiara feels the cold dread that had receded during the conversation wash over her again. But this time it's not panic. It's a slow, chilling realization. The life she knew has just ended. Junho looks at her, gauging her reaction. He sees her large eyes widen even further, and she unconsciously takes a half step back, bumping into the door. They saw you, he repeats, slowly and clearly, to ensure the words sink in. Okay, we're leaving now, through the back door. You stay with her. Junho looks at Kiara again. This man, Inseok, will be with you from now on. He's responsible for your safety. You do everything he says, no questions asked. Understood? It's not a question, it's an order. Kiara nods silently. Her mind tries to process what's happening. Guard, security, danger. The words whirl around in her head, finding no place. You're going home with him now, Junho continues. You'll take the necessary things, for a few days. You won't stay in your apartment. He'll find you somewhere else. But my work, my things, Kiara begins. Your work ended tonight, he says bluntly. Call and tell him you're not coming anymore. As for the things, Inseok will arrange everything. He takes a notepad and pen from the table, quickly writes something, tears off a sheet of paper, and hands it to her. This is my personal number, for emergencies only. Inseok will be your contact with me. Kiara takes the paper automatically. The numbers on it dance before her eyes. Junho comes very close to her. Now she can see every pore on his skin, the coarse stubble on his cheeks. Listen to me carefully, Kiara, he says so quietly that only she can hear. You saved my life. I will not forget that. And I will not let anything happen to you because of it. But for that, you must listen and obey. Your old world is over. A new one is about to begin. Breathe, hold on. And don't do anything stupid. He steps back, nodding to Inseok. He opens the door. Take her through the warehouse, to the back door. The car is already waiting. Inseok places his large hand on Kiara's shoulder, not roughly, but firmly, and guides her into the hallway. She walks as if in a dream. She glances over her shoulder. Junho is already standing at the desk, talking on the phone again. He doesn't look at her. He's already solving the next problems. Inseok leads her not toward the main hall, but in the opposite direction, through a narrow door into a warehouse. The place smells of vegetables and cardboard boxes. He quickly opens the heavy metal door leading to the back exit. Outside, in a dark alley, a black SUV waits, its engine running. In-seok puts Kiara in the back seat and sits down next to her. The driver, another man with the same inscrutable expression, immediately takes off. The car pulls out of the alley onto a deserted night street. "Your address," In-seok says. His voice is low and calm. Kiara automatically recites the street and house number. She looks out the window. The city floats past, familiar and suddenly foreign. She puts her hand on the bag she's never let go of. It's just her wallet and phone, all she has from her old life now. The car pulls up to her house, an ordinary 9-story panel building. In-seok gets out first, glances around the yard, then opens the door for her. Quickly, just the essentials. Clothes for 3 or 4 days. Documents. Medication, if needed. No trinkets. 5 minutes. He takes her up the elevator, stands next to her at the door of her apartment while she searches for her keys with trembling hands. In her small hallway, she feels briefly safe, but it's a false sense of security. In-seok doesn't go inside. He stands in the doorway, blocking it, and checks his watch. Kiara runs into the room and grabs her gym bag. She mechanically folds jeans, t-shirts, and underwear. She grabs her passport, health insurance, and phone charger. She opens the dresser drawer and sees a photo of her and her mother. Her hand instinctively reaches for it, but she remembers the words, "no knickknacks," and pulls it back. She zips up her bag and returns to the hallway. "That's it," she says quietly. In-seok nods, goes out onto the landing, lets her out, then locks the door with her own key. "I have the key," he says. "Let's go." The car takes her halfway across the city to a quiet residential area with new buildings. They are shown to a 1-room apartment on the 3rd floor. It is clean and impersonal, like a hotel room. The furniture is minimal. The kitchen has running water and a kettle. In-seok says, "I'll be in the next room." He points to the sofa in the living room. "You sleep there. Don't open the door to anyone but me. Don't go near the windows. Junho Sashi will arrive tomorrow morning. He'll talk to you." He goes into the small room and closes the door. Kiara is left alone in the middle of the stranger's living room. She puts her bag on the floor and slowly sinks onto the sofa. Silence. And then everything comes crashing down on her. Her body begins to shake. A fine, uncontrollable tremor runs through her entire body. She hugs herself, but it doesn't help. Images of the evening flash before her eyes again. A glint in the window. Junho falling. The sound of breaking glass. A hole in the wall. Junho's gaze in the utility room. She thinks about her apartment. About her job, which is finished. About her colleagues, about her manager, who is probably now giving a statement to the police. What do they think? What did she do? She thinks about that man in the window. He saw her. Junho said it twice. So it's true. Somewhere out there, there's a man who wanted to kill, and she stopped him. And that man now knows her face. The fear comes not like a wave, but like a slowly inflating balloon inside her chest. It presses on her ribs, making it difficult to breathe. She lies down on the sofa, staring at the white ceiling. The clock on the wall ticks. Every minute drags on endlessly. She tries to sleep, but her eyelids won't close. Every rustle behind the wall makes her jump. She gets up and checks that the front door is locked. Then she returns to the sofa. She stares at the ceiling again. She lives through the night, being in a strange half-sleep, where reality blends with nightmare. She hears the sound of breaking glass. She sees a glint. She feels the fabric of Junho's jacket beneath her fingers. Her muscles twitch, as if she were falling again. The morning arrives gray and rainy. Kiara may have dozed off for an hour, but she feels exhausted. She hears In-seok moving about in the next room. Then the sound of the shower. Then the smell of coffee. She gets up and goes to the kitchen. In-seok is already there, standing by the window, but the curtains are tightly drawn. He nods to her, pours coffee into a second cup, says, and places it in front of her. Silently. She drinks it. The coffee is hot and strong. Around 10 in the morning, there's a quiet knock on the door. In-seok looks through the peephole, then opens it. Junho enters. He looks different. He's wearing dark jeans and a simple black sweater. No jacket. He seems younger, but no less serious. His face is tired, but his gaze is clear. He glances at Kiara, at her rumpled clothes, at the dark circles under her eyes. "Did you get enough sleep?" he asks without preamble. "No," Kiara answers honestly. "I see," he says. He sits down on the chair opposite her. In-seok moves toward the door, taking up position. Junho folds his hands on the table. "The situation is this. Those who shot yesterday are my competitors. They won't stop. For them, you're a symbol now, someone who needs to be eliminated to save face. The police won't be able to protect you 24/7, but I can." He pauses, letting her understand. But I can't do this just like that out of gratitude. And you don't want to spend your whole life hiding. So, I have a proposition. Kiara looks at him, waiting. You're working for me temporarily. As my personal security assistant. Kiara blinks. I'm a waitress. I don't know anything about security. That's exactly why, Junho says. You think differently. You see things my people don't. They see threats, weapons, ambushes. You saw a glint in the window. I need eyes like those. Your job is to be there, to watch, to notice what seems wrong to you. That's all. That's all I need from you. What will happen to my life? To my apartment? She asks. We'll provide security for your apartment if you want to go back there. But for now, you'll live in safe places like this. This is your salary. And your protection. Your old job, as you understand, is no longer an option. Kiara stares silently into her cup. She realizes she has no choice. He's telling the truth. The police won't be at her door. And those people, they saw her. But working for him? Being part of this world she'd always only seen out of the corner of her eye. Tray in hand? It was scary. She looks up. And if I refuse? Junho looks at her directly. Then In-seok will take you home. We'll post someone at the door for a couple of days. But it'll be a formality. In a week, everything will be forgotten and you'll be left alone with your problem. And I won't be able to help because you won't be under my protection. The chances of them settling old scores are high. He's not threatening. He's simply stating the facts. And she believes him. He wouldn't waste so much energy just to lie. She feels a heaviness in her stomach. It's fear, but underneath it, there's something else. Stubbornness, anger at the situation, and a strange subtle feeling of challenge. She saved this powerful man. And now he's asking her not just to hide, but to use what she knows. To see. She takes a deep breath. How temporary? Until the threat is neutralized. A month? Maybe 2. And I can leave when the threat is gone? Yes. With a new job and references if you want. And with a complete guarantee that you will be forgotten. And you will teach me what to do, how to notice. In-seok will teach you the basics. The rest is up to you. Kiara looks at In-seok. He stands motionless, like a rock. Then she looks at Junho, at his square, serious face. She thinks about the glint in the window, about how her body reacted before her thoughts. Perhaps this is that very skill. She has no choice. But even if she did, could she return to the trays and smiles, knowing that somewhere out there was a man with a gun who remembered her face? No. Running was useless. All that remained was to accept the rules of the new game. She sits up straight in her chair. Okay, she says quietly but clearly. I agree. Junho nods slowly. Something like respect flickers in his eyes. Okay, today is a day of rest. Tomorrow, In-seok will start teaching you. He stands up. And Kiara, welcome to the new reality. Try to survive it. The next morning, In-seok begins teaching Kiara. The lessons take place in the same safe apartment. In-seok doesn't seem like a teacher. He speaks little and only to the point. The first exercise is simple. He places Kiara in the middle of the living room. Close your eyes, he says. Kiara closes them. What am I wearing? In-seok asks after a minute. Kiara opens her eyes. She looks at him. Dark pants, a dark gray long-sleeve shirt, and regular sneakers. Pants, shirt, shoes, she says. The color of the shirt? Asks In-seok. Gray. The shade? Kiara is silent. She doesn't know. Are the cuffs buttoned? In-seok continues. She looks. Yes, they are buttoned. Which hand is the watch on? Which wrist? On the left, Kiara quickly answers. Okay. And yesterday? Asks In-seok. Kiara freezes. Yesterday? She doesn't remember. You don't remember, In-seok states. That's normal. You're not trained. Now you will train. Your job is to see details. Always. He makes her stare out the window at the empty parking lot for 5 minutes, then asks how many cars passed, what color they were, and which way they went. At first, Kiara gets it wrong all the time. She saw them, but she doesn't remember them. Then In-seok teaches her to read the street. People are creatures of habit, he says. The mailman comes at 10. The neighbor walks the dog at 7 in the evening. The old lady looks out her third-floor window from 4 to 5. When a habit is broken, it's a signal. Not always dangerous, but always a reason to pay attention. He teaches her to look at people's hands, not their faces, at their shoes, at the way someone carries their bag. He shows her what it looks like to be simply waiting, and what it looks like to be watching. The one waiting has a bored look. He looks at his watch, at his phone. The one watching looks right through you. His eyes move, but don't focus on the details around him. He's looking for one goal. Kiara listens and tries to remember. Her head aches with tension. She's never thought like this before. She's simply lived. Now she's learning to see the world as a set of signs and signals. In-seok doesn't praise her. He simply nods when she gives the correct answer. But one day, when she accurately describes a person he'd shown her in a photograph 5 minutes earlier, he says, "Not bad, you're learning fast." For Kiara, this sounds like the highest praise. 3 days later, Junho arrives in the morning. He looks at Kiara, assessing her. "Ready to go?" he asks curtly. Kiara nods, though inside she's clenched with fear. She puts on the dark, comfortable clothes they bought her. Nothing bright, nothing that would restrict her movement. Their car is different, not black, but gray, a regular sedan. In-seok is driving. Junho sits in the back seat, Kiara next to him. She tries to sit closer to the door. "Where are we going?" "Yee," she asks quietly. "Business meeting. In a neutral location. Your job is to stay close and observe. Everything. If anything seems strange, speak quietly to In-seok over the comm." He hands her a small, transparent earpiece. "Put it on. You'll hear us, and we'll hear you. Only speak if something's important." Kiara inserts the earphone. She barely feels it in her ear. The car drives to the business district, stopping at a low building with a cafe on the ground floor. In-seok gets out first and opens the door. Junho gets out without looking back. Kiara follows. Her heart is pounding. She remembers her lessons. She looks around. She sees a woman pushing a stroller, a man reading a newspaper on a bench, a cyclist fixing his chain. Everything seems normal. They enter the cafe. Junho heads to a table in the corner, where a man in glasses is already seated. In-seok sits down at the table next to him, with his back to the wall so he can see the entire room. He nods to Kiara to take the empty chair next to him. Kiara sits up. She puts her hands on her knees to keep them from shaking. She looks at the waitress, at the people at the neighboring tables, at the bartender. She tries to notice details: shoes, hands, the way people hold their cups. In-seok's even, calm breathing in her earpiece. She hears Junho talking about deliveries, deadlines, quality. His voice is businesslike, emotionless. And suddenly, her gaze catches the man by the window. He's sitting alone, drinking coffee. There's a phone in front of him, but he's not looking at it. He's staring off into space. His gaze slid across their table, over Junho, and then hit the wall. Just like In-seok said, the gaze of someone who doesn't see, but searches. "In-seok," Kiara whispers quietly, leaning over the table as if straightening a napkin. The man by the window, in a blue shirt. He's not looking at his phone. He's looking right through everyone. In-seok doesn't turn his head. He brings his coffee cup to his lips. "I see him." His voice sounds quietly in her earpiece. "Good work. Keep watching." A minute later, the man in the blue shirt pays for the coffee and leaves. In-seok quietly speaks into the microphone on his wrist. Kiara realizes that one of their men outside will now follow the man. The meeting lasts 40 minutes. Kiara is on guard the entire time. She doesn't notice anything else suspicious. When Junho gets up to leave, he nods to his interlocutor and glances briefly at Kiara. The glance is quick, but she reads the question in it. "Is everything all right?" She nods almost imperceptibly. That evening, they don't return to the safety of their apartment right away. Junho tells In-seok to go to one of his clubs. Not a nightclub, but a gym. A boxing gym. Kiara is waiting in the car, but Junho tells her, "Come in. It's safe here." They enter through the back door. The gym smells of sweat, leather, and antiseptic. The sound of punching bags and rhythmic breathing can be heard. Several men are training. They nod to Junho, looking curiously at Kiara, but don't ask any questions. Junho takes off his jacket and shirt, revealing a black t-shirt. Kiara sees his body. It truly is the body of an athlete. Broad shoulders, defined muscles on his back and arms. But she also sees faint scars. 2 long, thin marks on his shoulder, another on his ribs. These are not sports injuries. He doesn't go into the ring. He approaches the heavy bag and begins to hit it, slowly at first, practicing his punches, then faster and harder. His face is focused, sweat beaded on his forehead. There's more to these punches than just practice. There's fury in them, and fatigue. Kiara sits on a bench against the wall and watches. She sees his muscular, square face contort with effort. She sees how, between punches, he closes his eyes and breathes deeply, as if trying to shake off some weight. He's not the confident, cold boss from the cafe. Here, he's simply a tired man who's taking it out on a punching bag. Kiara suddenly realizes he's only 27, a little older than her. But on his shoulders rests a world where gunfire erupts from windows and only a few can be trusted. He trains for 20 minutes, then stops, wiping his face with a towel. He approaches her, his breathing still uneven. "Aren't you scared here?" he asks, meaning the gym, the men, the atmosphere. "No," Kiara tells the truth. Here, among this honest physical labor and sweat, She's less scared than in that cafe. It's normal. He looks at her, then throws the towel over his shoulder. Let's go, he says. Time to rest. On the way back, the car is silent. Junho sits, staring out the window. In Seoka focused on the road, Kiara looks out at the city at night. Suddenly, Junho says without turning around, "You did a good job today." The man in the cafe. That was a good note. Kiara nods, though he doesn't see it. Thank you. You're welcome. It's your job now. He falls silent, but the silence is no longer so tense. Why boxing? Kiara asks unexpectedly. She bites her tongue immediately, afraid the question is too personal. But Junho doesn't get angry. He shrugs. Habit. Since youth, it's all simple there. Either you hit or you get hit. Either you defend yourself or you get hit. Clear rules. A clear outcome. He turns and looks at her. In our world, there are no rules. The outcome is often unclear. Have you missed a lot? Kiara asks, looking at the scars on his shoulder, now hidden by his shirt. Junho follows her gaze and understands what she means. Enough, he says shortly. Then he adds, to learn not to miss. The car stops at a traffic light. Junho looks at the street musicians playing on the corner. And you? He asks. What did you do besides waitressing? Sports? Hobbies? The question catches Kiara off guard. Track and field? In school and college? Running? Hurdles? Then there was no time. I had to work. Running? Junho repeats. A useful skill. Sometimes the best thing you can do is quickly get somewhere else. He says this without irony. I also love to cook, Kiara says suddenly, not knowing why she's sharing this. When I have time, I make complex desserts. It's calming. Junho turns his head, and a spark of interest appears in his eyes. Desserts? Unexpected. What, for example? Tiramisu, pavlova, choux pastries. She feels herself blushing. It sounds so stupid in the context of their lives. Eclairs, Junho says. Something twitches at the corner of his mouth, almost a smile. My grandmother made the best eclairs in Seoul. With real custard. With vanilla or chocolate? Kiara asks automatically. With vanilla. Always with vanilla. And the icing on top isn't just chocolate, but with cocoa butter, so it crunches. Yes, that's important. Kiara nods. Otherwise, it is soft and sticks to your teeth. They look at each other for a second. And in that second, there's no boss and his assistant. No danger and no past. There are simply two people who unexpectedly discovered a common thread. Baking. The traffic light turns green. The car starts moving. The moment passes, but the tension in the car finally dissipates. Maybe you should make those eclairs sometime, Junho says, looking out the window again. To test the quality. Maybe, Kiara answers quietly. She looks at his profile, illuminated by the streetlights. He's become serious and closed off again. But something has changed. The wall between them has cracked a tiny bit, and through that crack, a little ordinary human warmth has passed. That's enough for now. A few days after the conversation about eclairs, Insok comes into the apartment with a serious expression. He places a printed photograph on the table in front of Kiara. It shows a man with a stern face and short hair. He looks directly into the camera. His name is Pak, Insok says. He works for our competitors, a specialist in long-range solutions. He's in town now. We found him yesterday. Kiara looks at the photograph. She's never seen this man, but she knows who he is. The one who was in that window. The one who pulled the trigger. He came to finish the job? She asks quietly. Yes, Inseok answers shortly. And now he has two targets, Junho Sashi, and you. The words fell into the silence of the room. Kiara felt a chill creep up her spine. She knew there was danger, but seeing the face of the man who wanted to take her away, that was different. What are we doing? She asks, trying to keep her voice steady. We act first, Junho says for her. He's standing in the doorway. He's heard the entire conversation. We won't wait for him to pick up a rifle again. We'll find him and neutralize him. He approaches the table and picks up a photograph. He has a weakness. He doesn't work alone. He needs an observer, a spotter, a driver. He's like an instrument. Someone else directs him. We'll find that person. Junho's team works quickly. Maybe a repeat customer. Maybe a strange car in the yard. She stares until her eyes hurt. On the second day, she notices. Wait, she says. There's that car. Gray. Ordinary. It was there the day before, too. In the evening. It's parked not at this entrance to the restaurant, but at that very office building across the street. See? And then, that morning, that day, it's there too. The footage does indeed show a nondescript gray foreign car. It's parked in an awkward spot, not in a parking lot. Insok zooms in, catching the driver's face. The man is wearing a cap, his face unclear. But he's clearly taking a picture of something with his phone. the restaurant windows, the entrance. Good job, Insok says grimly. That's the tipster. He was scouting the area. Now we'll find out who owns the car. It turns out it's simple. The car was rented. It was rented by a man with documents named L and Minsok. This is clearly a fake name, but there is a passport photo. He's a young man with no distinguishing features. He's small fry, Junho says, studying the photo. He's used once and thrown away. But through him, we can get to the operator, the one who gives the money and the orders. We'll find this L. A day later, news comes in. Lee Min-seok, the one from the photo, has been spotted. He's staying in a cheap hotel on the outskirts of town. He's keeping quiet and doesn't go anywhere. It seems he's waiting for his next assignment or payment. Junho makes a decision. We'll take him, quietly and quickly. He knows the cameraman's face. He'll lead us to whoever hired Park. In-seok and 2 others leave for the operation. Junho and Kiara remain in the apartment, which now serves as the command center. Junho paces nervously. He doesn't like being left out. Kiara sits by the window, but doesn't look out. She stares at her laptop screen, where the dots glow, the GPS tags of his team's cars. They're approaching the hotel. In Junho's earpiece carries In-seok's short, clear reports. We've arrived. The hotel is quiet. We're entering. Then there's silence for a few minutes. Room 37. The door is closed. Getting ready to enter. Another pause. Muffled sounds can be heard. Footsteps, the scraping of a master key, a soft click. We're entering! In-seok's sharp, loud voice, full of alarm. Trap! Empty! There's no one! Retreat! There's a crash. Not gunshots, more like the sound of falling furniture. Then screams, not their own anymore, but strangers, angry and harsh. A heavy thud is heard, then another. Ambush! In-seok shouts, fury evident in his voice. There are 3 of them! Hold on! The connection is momentarily lost. Junho freezes, his face turning stony. He grabs his phone to order backup, but at that moment, another phone rings. His personal one, the one known only to Kiara and her closest friends. Junho looks at the screen. An unknown number. He slowly brings the phone to his ear. Hello? He says in an icy voice. A calm, almost polite male voice comes over the phone. It speaks in pure Korean. Junho Sashi, I hope you liked my little gift at the hotel. You're looking in the wrong place and for the wrong thing. And your new toy, that waitress. Tell her we already found the keys to her old apartment. Too bad she wasn't there. But we're persistent. See you soon. Click. Connection interrupted. Junho slowly lowers the phone. He looks at Kiara. She only heard his side of the conversation, but from his face she understands everything. A new phase of the game had begun, and they had just lost the first round. Junho slowly places his phone on the table. The sound seems very loud in the silence. He looks at Kiara, and in his eyes she sees not just seriousness, but something new, a sharp, cold alarm. It was them, he says, his voice even and steely. They know about you. They call you Toy, and they were in your apartment. The words, in your apartment, fall like a stone into the silence of the room. Kiara feels the ground slipping from under her feet. Her apartment is the last place connecting her to her old, normal life. And now they've been there, crossed that threshold. They tried to find you there, Junho continues. They didn't find you, so they'll look here. That means your status has changed. Before, you were an accidental nuisance. Now you're an official target, an insult that must be eliminated. That changes everything. In-seok's voice comes through the earpiece again, hoarse and strangled. They've left. One was wounded, not seriously. There were more of them. They were waiting for us. It was a pure provocation. Lee Min-seok was never there. I know, Junho says into the microphone. Come back, now. The plan is changing. He looks at Kiara. Get your things, right now. Everything you brought here. We have 30 minutes. The next half hour passes in a feverish rush. Kiara sweeps her things into a bag. In-seok and his men return. One of them has a bandaged arm. Everyone's faces are grim and angry. There are now 2 cars. Kiara gets into the first with Junho and In-seok. The second car with the remaining guards follows behind. They're not going to another safe house, but out of town. Their new destination is an isolated modern house on a gated property, surrounded by a high fence. Entry is through heavy iron gates with cameras. The house stands alone, surrounded by forest. Junho says curtly as they step inside. The house is spacious, minimalist, and impersonal, like a hotel room. There's nowhere else to go. We'll stay here until we finally sort this problem out. Kiara nods silently. She feels like a captured animal being transported from cage to cage. Her world has shrunk to the size of this house and the people inside it. From that moment on, Kiara and Junho are practically inseparable. They share the same space. He works, talks on the phone, confers with In-seok, studies maps, and reports on the big screen. She helps as much as she can, monitors the perimeter cameras, makes coffee, tries to be helpful. In-seok or another guard is always in the same room, sometimes in the next, but the door is always open. There's no privacy anymore. At first, such closeness is unbearable. Kiara feels exposed, constantly watched. She catches Junho's glances when he's lost in thought. He, in turn, begins to notice when she needs some alone time. He simply goes out onto the terrace to talk on the phone, leaving her in the room with In-seok. One evening, a few days after moving in, they find themselves alone in the large living room. In-seok checks the perimeter. Outside, rain pours down, pounding the roof and windows. Junho stands by the picture window, looking out into the darkness of the forest. His back is tense. "They won't leave you alone," he says suddenly, without turning around. "As long as you're alive and near me, it's a red flag for them. They have to prove they can get you. Even if it's risky?" Kiara asks quietly. She's sitting on the couch, hugging her knees. "I'm nobody, just a waitress." Junho turns to her, his face even sharper in the dim light. "That's precisely why. You're a nobody in their world, and that nobody outsmarted their best marksman, humiliated them. In their eyes, you became a symbol of weakness, and weakness in our business must be eradicated. Otherwise, others will see it." Kiara says, "These are the rules," he corrects. "Stupid, cruel, but rules. And now you're inside this game, just like me." He walks over and sits in the chair opposite her. A low table stands between them. "I pulled you in," he says, surprisingly simply. "If I'd simply hired security for you and left, maybe they would have considered you insignificant. But I didn't. I kept you by my side, because you saved my life. And because your gaze is useful to me. It was a selfish act." Kiara looks at him. She hadn't expected such directness. "I had no choice then," she says, "and I had no choice after. You offered the only way out. I don't blame you. But you're afraid," he states. "Yes," she admits honestly. "Every day. But now, less than the first night." "Strange," Junho says, a bitter note in his voice. "You get used to danger, like background noise. That's a bad sign." Silence falls, but this time it's not awkward, but calm. The rain outside creates a secluded cocoon. "Why boxing?" Kiara asks again, returning to the topic from the car. Now she can ask. "In my youth, the real reason." Junho looks at his hands, clenches them, unclenches them. "To not be weak," he says simply. "My father, he wasn't like me. He was weak, kind. He was deceived, taken advantage of. In our world, that led to bad consequences. I saw where it leads. And I decided I would be strong. So strong that no one could harm the people I care about." He grins, but there's no humor in it. The irony is, the stronger you become, the more enemies you have, and the more people you need to protect. He pauses, then looks at her. "What about your parents? Do they know where you are?" Kiara shakes her head. "My mom lives in another state. I told her I got a new job with a private catering company, with travel. She's happy for me. She thinks I'm finally moving up." Kiara's voice breaks. "I can't tell her the truth. She won't understand. She'll be scared for me," Junho says quietly. "The less people know, the safer they are. My mother also thinks I'm importing car parts, and I'll do everything I can to make sure she thinks so for the rest of her life." They look at each other, and in that moment, Kiara sees not a boss, but a person who also bears a burden, who also must lie to those closest to her. A new understanding arises between them. They both live double lives. They both protect their loved ones, keeping them in the dark. "We'll get out of this," Junho suddenly says, and it sounds more like a promise he's making to himself. "I'll finish this story, and you can go back to your life, to your éclairs, to normalcy." Kiara wants to believe him. She nods. For the first time in days, she feels not just a forced partnership, but a real connection. They're in the same boat. And the storm isn't over yet, but now they have a chance to row to the same rhythm. The search for the informant continues day and night. Junho and his team are checking everyone who might have known about his plans on the day of the restaurant attack and the hotel ambush. The list is short. Nearby security guards, drivers, and a few members of the management team. In-seok does the main work. He checks financial transactions, phone calls, and movements. He speaks with each suspect personally, looking them in the eye. Kiara watches from the sidelines. She sees Junho becoming increasingly withdrawn and cold. The thought of someone close to him cheating on him hurts him more than the obvious threat of an enemy. The solution comes unexpectedly, not through complex analysis, but through simple vigilance. Kiara, reviewing surveillance footage from the security cameras around their old safe house, notices a familiar car. Not an enemy vehicle, but one of their own official SUVs. It drives past the building the day before they leave. Nothing special, but it drives slowly, and the next day it reappears, after they've left, and pulls up in front of the entrance. Kiara shows the recording to In Seok. He frowns. It's Yoon's car. He's in charge of logistics, transportation. What did he want at your house when you were no longer there? In Seok starts digging deeper. It turns out Yoon is a longtime employee, considered reliable by everyone. But he's got problems. Large debts from gambling. Debts no one knew about. Junho summons Yoon to his office in the city, ostensibly for an urgent mission. Yoon arrives unsuspecting, acting as usual. But when In Seok calmly shows him printouts of his phone calls to numbers linked to competitors and photos of his car outside Kiara's house, his face turns white. He tries to defend himself, but his words falter. Junho doesn't shout. He sits at the table and looks at Yoon with such icy disappointment that Yoon feels physically ill. How much? Junho asks quietly. Yoon mumbles the amount. It's not that big. He sold information about the boss's movements and the new girl who's getting in everyone's way for just a few tens of thousands, out of fear of debt. In Seok and two others lead Yoon away. Junho sits alone in the office for a long time. When he returns to the country house, his face seems aged. He says to Kiara, looking past her, "We found it! It was Yoon! He sold us out because of gambling debts. Now they knew where we were, and knew we would follow the wrong trail at the hotel, all because of money." With the informant eliminated, the main leak disappears, but the threat remains. Park and his employers are still out there somewhere. Junho decides to lure them out. He plans a controlled trip to the city, supposedly for an important meeting. According to their intel, the competitors are eager for action. They need to be shown an opportunity. The route is carefully planned. 2 cars. In the first, Junho, Tiara, and In Seok are driving. The second car, with security, follows behind. The trip is planned for the day, on a busy highway. The first 20 minutes are calm. Kiara sits in the back next to Junho. She looks out the window, but now her gaze automatically scans for oddities. The car following them for too long. The motorcyclist who doesn't overtake. In Seok drives calmly, but his eyes are constantly moving, checking the mirrors. "There's a tail," he says quietly. "A silver minivan, 2 cars back." "I see it," Junho replies just as quietly. He doesn't look surprised. They turn off the main highway onto a less busy road leading to the business district. There are fewer cars here. The minivan is still behind, keeping its distance. And suddenly, the situation changes. A large truck suddenly pulls out from a side street. It doesn't swerve directly in front of their wheels, but it blocks their lane, forcing In Seok brake sharply and change lanes. At the same moment, the minivan accelerates and tries to catch up with them on the left. "Get ready!" In Seok shouts. It's a trap. They want to put them in a pincer movement, a truck in front, a minivan on the side, to force them to stop or crash. In Seok hits the gas, trying to get in front of the truck's nose. It's no use. The truck is too massive. The minivan is almost there. Kiara presses herself against the seat, her heart pounding. She hears Junho shouting orders over the comms to the second car, which, however, is also blocked by another vehicle. She sees the window of the minivan roll down. There's a man sitting there. Not Pak, someone else. His hand is holding something. In Seok's lessons remain. She looks not at the man's face, but at his hands, at his posture. He takes aim, but his car rushes alongside him on the uneven road, rocking him. He can't aim properly. And then she remembers something In Seok said about driving. If they attack from the flank, change speed abruptly. Either floor it or floor it. Throw out your aim. In Seok, slow down, she shouts without thinking. In Seok, acting on instinct, slams on the brakes. Their heavy SUV nosedives sharply, and their speed drops. The minivan, which had already pulled up alongside and was preparing to act, leaps forward half a car length. The man in the window is thrown forward by the momentum, his gun arm twitching, the barrel slamming against the window pillar. He momentarily loses control. That second is enough. The second security car, having managed to avoid its obstacle, hits the minivan's rear bumper at full speed. It spins, and with a screech of tires, flies off the road, crashing into a pole. "Good job," he says hoarsely. "Very good job." Junho looks at Kiara silently. There's more than just gratitude in his eyes. Deep, silent respect. She didn't panic. She remembered the lesson and applied it. She saved them for the second time. They return to the country house. This time, there's no defeat in the air. There's a cold, focused rage. They were openly attacking the road. They knew about the trip. This means the competitors either have other sources of information or they're keeping a very close eye on them. Junho's patience has snapped. Enough, he says, gathering Insok and his key men. Kiara is present at this meeting. She's already part of the team. We fought back. We hid. They took that as weakness. They think they can hunt us with impunity. It's time to show them the error of their ways. He spreads a city map and several photographs on the table. A photo of Park. A photo of the head of a rival gang, an elderly man named Kim. Photos of their key targets. 2 nightclubs, an office building disguised as a trading company, a warehouse complex. We won't fight them, Junho says. We'll ruin them. We'll deprive them of their money, their faces, and their patrons. He presents a plan. Clear, multi-pronged, and as legal as possible. Using incriminating evidence gathered over months, they pass information to law enforcement about the club's illegal activities. Through their business connections, they cut off the supply chain for the front company. Crucially, they've found their weak point, a large shipment of valuable goods scheduled to arrive at a warehouse complex in 3 days. Without this shipment, their cash flow will be disrupted for months. But they're guarding it heavily, one of the men notes. I know, says Junho. So we won't hit the security. We'll hit the information. We'll make sure their own suppliers reroute the shipment. And when their people arrive at the empty warehouse, we'll pass on an anonymous tip about a showdown between rival groups being planned there. Let the police welcome them with open arms. It's clever, it's cruel, and it must work. The plan requires precision and absolute secrecy. Junho personally oversees every step. The next 3 days are a time of quiet, invisible war. Kiara watches Junho barely sleep, coordinating actions over the phone and through secure channels. She sees his team, inspired by his determination, working tirelessly. She also receives the task herself. She has a good memory and attention to detail. She helps verify data, looking for discrepancies in competitors' documents that could be exploited. She finds several errors in their shell company's invoices, which Junho immediately forwards to her contacts. At the tax office, finally, the big day arrives. It's nighttime. Junho, In-seok, Mos, and Kiara are in the house in front of a large screen displaying a map. Glowing dots on it are the GPS tags of their people, and, according to intelligence, their competitors' vehicles. Everything goes almost according to plan. A shipment of goods, following the fake instructions altered by hackers, detours and heads off to an unknown destination. A team of competitors, led by Kim's trusted confidant, arrives at the warehouse. They are confused. At that moment, police cars, sirens blaring, enter the premises. The arrest begins. At the same time, police, with a prearranged warrant, conduct searches of clubs, finding large quantities of illegal bottled water, disguised as counterfeit alcohol. Tax inspectors find a pile of unaccounted cash at the company's office. On the screen, Junho watches as the competitors' hotspots fade away one by one. He doesn't smile. He simply watches, his square face impassive. The main target, he says quietly. Park and Kim. Where are they? Half an hour later, a message comes through. Park, their shooter, was detained in a rented apartment. A weapon was found on him. He was charged with serious crimes. Kim, the old boss, didn't wait for the arrest. According to reports, he's already packing his things to disappear from the city, and possibly the country. His reputation and business were destroyed overnight. An unusual silence reigns in the house in the morning. Not the silence of an ambush or a wait, but the silence after a storm. In-seok reports that all key threats have been neutralized. Kim has fled, his organization paralyzed by arrests and financial collapse. Park is in prison. Their informant network has been destroyed. The guards are still on duty, but the tension has eased. People speak more quietly. Their movements become more fluid. Even the air in the house feels lighter. Junho goes out onto the terrace. He stands there alone, looking out at the forest. Kiara watches him from the living room. His shoulders, usually tense, are slightly slumped. He simply stands there and breathes. An hour later, he gathers everyone. The danger is over, he says simply. The main one, at least. They're defeated, and they have no time for us now. We've won this round. He announces that the team can resume normal operations. The guards are being replaced, and some people are retiring. The house itself remains a safe haven, but people can now come and go. For Kiara, this silence is strange. She's accustomed to the adrenaline rush, to the need to be on guard. Now that she can relax, she feels lost. She doesn't have to peer at every car outside the window. She doesn't have to analyze every sound. Her life, which a month ago was compressed into the size of a shelter, suddenly feels big again. And within this bigness lies uncertainty. 2 days pass. Life settles into a new, calm routine. Junho returns to his usual routine, But now, without the need to hide, he's back to attending business meetings and managing his legitimate businesses. One day after dinner, he asks Kiara to come into the study he's set up in one of the rooms of the house. He's sitting at the table. An envelope and a small tablet lie in front of him. "Sit down," he says. When she sits, he slides the tablet toward her. On the screen are documents for a new apartment in a good part of town, and a view of a bank account with a large sum. "What is this?" Kiara asks, although she already guesses. "This is your freedom," Junho says. His voice is calm and serious. "I said that when the threat is eliminated, you can leave. The threat is eliminated. Here is the new apartment. The documents are already registered in your name. The money is compensation for what you've been through and for your work. It's enough to start a new life. Open your own little cafe with those very same eclairs if you want." He looks at her directly. "You're free, Kiara. You could leave right now. Insok will take you wherever you say. You don't have to be here anymore. You've fulfilled your part of the deal." "Brilliant." Kiara looks at the screen, at the documents. This is all she could dream of during her worst nights. Safety, a normal life, a financial start. Anything to forget this nightmare and start over. She looks up at Junho. He's waiting. His face doesn't express any hope. He's simply giving her a choice as he promised. And then she understands. She doesn't want to leave. This thought comes not as a flash of insight, but as a quiet, firm certainty. The terrible month didn't break her. It changed her. He hadn't expected this question. "Why?" he asks. "The danger has passed. You can live a normal life." "What is a normal life?" Kiara asks. "I'm not the same waitress who dropped the tray a month ago. I can't just forget everything I've learned. I don't want to forget." She pauses, collecting her thoughts. "You said my perspective is useful. Is that true? Or was it just for the duration of the danger?" Junho slowly leans back in his chair. He studies her face, her large, now hard eyes. "It's true," he says honestly. "You see what others don't. You have instinct and composure. There are few people like you." "Then I want to stay and work," Kiara says clearly. "A real job, not as the girl who needs to be protected, but as part of a team. I'll learn everything I need to. I've already started." Junho is silent for a long moment. Then that same sparkle, almost a smile, that she saw when they were talking about eclairs appears in his eyes. "It won't be easy," he warns. "And it's not always safe, even now." "I know," Kiara says. "But running away from this now is scarier for me than staying." Junho nods. He closes the lid of his tablet and sets it aside. "Okay," he says simply. "Then welcome to the team. Officially." He extends his hand across the table. Not like a boss to a subordinate, like a partner to a partner. Kiara puts her hand in his. His palm is firm and warm. "I agree," she says. The envelope with the apartment documents and money remains untouched on the table. She no longer needs it. She has already found what she was looking for. Not a refuge, but a place. Not protection, but a purpose. And a man next to whom she feels not weak, but strong. Her choice has been made. And this is only the beginning.